Have you ever just picked up a product, maybe, I don't know, an app or some gadget, and it just worked
Yeah.
instantly?
Yeah, like you didn't even have to think about it, no manual needed.
Exactly. It feels almost intuitive, like it knew what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
That seamlessness, that's not luck.
No, it's very deliberate. That's the result of really exceptional product design, grounded in a clear philosophy.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Hmm.
We go through really interesting source material, pull out the key insights, the important stuff, basically giving you a shortcut to getting up to speed.
Hmm.
Today, our mission is to really unpack the core principles behind what makes products, well, insanely great, looking through the lens of one of history's most discussed visionaries.
And specifically, we're focusing on the design thinking.
Right, we're drawing insights directly from excerpts focused on Steve Jobs and his approach to designing products. Now, look, lots of people know the biography, the story,
Yeah.
but this deep dive, it's not about that. It's laser focused on the design principles themselves, the actionable ideas he used.
And that's what we'll explore. We'll look at the core ideas that guided him, that relentless push for simplicity, the focus on user experience above all else.
His sometimes controversial takes on innovation, too.
Definitely. And the sheer discipline needed in development. By the end, you should have a much better handle on not just what makes these products stand out, but the thinking behind how they're engineered. It applies way beyond tech, really.
Okay, let's unpack this then. At the very foundation of Jobs' design philosophy, there's this principle. It sounds simple, maybe even a bit obvious, but it's powerful.
You mean simplicity is the ultimate sophistication?
That's the one.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a nice slogan, it was like a core directive. For him, real simplicity meant fundamentally, if you need instructions, the designs failed.
Right, no manuals.
Exactly. It wasn't about just making something look minimalist or basic. It was this ruthless process of cutting out everything unnecessary. Every button, every feature, every step that added complexity.
You saw friction everywhere, didn't he?
Totally. Every confusing moment, every extra click, it adds cognitive load. It gets in the way of just using the thing. So the goal was distill it. Make it pure, intuitive, obvious.
Like you said, so it just works.
Right. Think about stuff you use every day. How much does that ease of use or the frustration when it's not easy really affect whether you would want to bother with it?
That's a great point. We often think more features equals more value.
But he flipped that, didn't he? Less, but better, more intentional.
And that drive to strip things down, it seems like it naturally led to the second core idea, questioning everything.
Absolutely. You can't simplify effectively unless you challenge why things are the way they are in the first place.
So question everything about the current design.
Exactly. It wasn't about small improvements. It was about challenging every single assumption. Why is it done this way? Why does it have to be this way?
That's the think different mantra applied to design, essentially.
Precisely. It's about having the guts to break from how things have always been done, look at it fresh, and just keep asking why until you find a genuinely better, maybe simpler way.
And it's how those two connect that's really interesting. You simplify by questioning why it's complex.
Yeah, they feed each other. It forces you to look past the status quo, past, well, that's just how it is.
Is this button necessary? Does this step actually help the user?
It's a powerful way to think, isn't it? Makes you wonder how much we just accept without asking why it was designed that way or if it still makes sense. That questioning opens the door for, real breakthroughs.
Okay, now here's where, for me, it gets really interesting, because it wasn't just about how things looked. It was this deep, almost obsessive focus on the user's whole journey, the experience.
Yes, that's the shift. Start with the user experience, then work backwards to the technology. That was the mantra.
So design isn't just the skin, it's how it works deep down.
Exactly. It's not just aesthetics. It's fundamentally how it feels to interact with it, how it works. He wanted every interaction to feel, well, almost magical, delightful, effortless.
Which brings us to that idea of the interface becoming invisible.
Right. The best interface is no interface. The goal is to make the technology fade into the background. So seamless, so intuitive, that you're just focused on what you're doing, not on figuring out the tool.
Like a light switch you mentioned. You don't think about the switch design.
You just want light. The tech disappears. Your intent becomes the action. Can you think of a time when technology just melted away like that, where you didn't even notice it? That's the gold standard he was aiming for.
And achieving that kind of seamlessness often came down to this incredible, almost fanatical attention to detail.
Oh, absolutely. Perfection in details matters. Hugely.
And not just the obvious stuff, right? It wasn't just polishing the screen.
No. It was obsessing over every pixel, every curve, every sound it made, the timing of transitions. But the key insight, and the source really shits this, is that the parts you can't see, they had to be just as beautiful, just as well crafted.
Like the inside of the machine.
Exactly. Quality had to go all the way through. It wasn't just a surface treatment.
Why, though? If users don't see it.
Well, connect it to the bigger picture. It wasn't just about aesthetics, even hidden ones. It was about building trust, longevity. Users, maybe subconsciously, can feel when something is crafted with that level of care.
Like an integrity to the object itself.
Precisely. It creates a sort of halo effect. The quality you sense in tiny details makes you trust the whole thing more. It feels reliable, robust, thoughtful. That builds incredible loyalty because you sense it's been crafted with real care inside and out.
Okay, so meticulous crafting is one thing, but knowing what to build in the first place, how did Jobs approach that? Especially when it came to true innovation. His take was different.
Yeah, definitely controversial for some, but incredibly effective. His approach was basically create products people don't know they need yet.
Which flies in the face of conventional market research, right?
Completely. He famously distrusted relying too heavily on market research, asking people what they want now. His view was, don't rely on market research, show people the future.
That classic quote about better horses.
Exactly. If you ask customers what they want, they'll say better horses. It wasn't about ignoring users, but understanding that true leaps in innovation often come from seeing possibilities users can't yet articulate.
So envisioning a need before it's obvious.
Right. Solving problems or creating desires people didn't even know they had. That takes real foresight, real vision, not just incremental tweaks. Think about it. Is there a product you use now that before it existed you wouldn't have thought you needed? But now you can't live without it.
Yeah, good point. Several come to mind.
That's the kind of innovation he championed.
And to actually deliver that kind of integrated visionary product, he believed you needed total control.
Which leads to the principle of integration of hardware and software.
Controlling the whole widget, basically.
Yes. His fundamental belief was that the truly great seamless experiences, they only happen when you control the entire stack, from the silicon chips to the OS, the physical design, the applications, everything.
Like a symphony orchestra with one conductor ensuring harmony.
That's a good analogy. When everything is designed from the ground up to work together perfectly, you can achieve a level of elegance, performance, and just user delight that's incredibly hard otherwise.
Mixing and matching components from different places compromises that vision.
That was his view. Don't compromise by relying on others' parts if it means a disjointed experience. For him, achieving that truly transformative user experience required essentially absolute control over all the critical elements.
Okay, so we have the philosophy, the vision for user experience, the approach to innovation, but then there's the actual work, the hard part of bringing these things into the world, which was apparently incredibly disciplined.
Oh, immensely, and often involved really tough choices. This brings us to a huge one. The discipline to say no to 1,000 things.
Focus, focus, focus.
Exactly. But Jobs understood something critical. Focus isn't just about saying no to the bad ideas. It's about saying no to the good ideas. Sometimes even the great ideas.
If they don't fit the core vision.
Precisely. The goal was do a few things exceptionally well. Don't spread yourself thin. Doing many things just adequately.
Which sometimes meant killing projects, right? Even late in the game.
Absolutely. That was part of the discipline. Being willing to kill projects, even ones with significant investment, if they weren't meeting those incredibly high standards, if they weren't going to be insanely great.
That takes serious conviction.
It does. It's prioritizing the final product quality above sunk costs or ego. You can see how that kind of intense focus improves quality everywhere, not just in tech.
And that commitment to doing a few things perfectly seems linked to the next point, the process of actually building, prototype, and iterate.
Yes. It wasn't about abstract planning forever. It was about getting tangible, making real working models, even if they were rough initially.
Getting something you can hold, use, react to.
Right. And then refine, test it, tweak it, iterate constantly until it felt absolutely right. Until it delivered that magic.
And crucially, being willing to throw it out and start over.
Yeah, that's the hard part for many. Not being afraid to scrap it and restart if it just wasn't hitting that mark of perfection, if it wasn't quite there.
That level of dedication, discarding potentially huge amounts of work, it's pretty intense.
It really is. It speaks to that unwavering vision again. A relentless pursuit of excellence where the final user experience trumped everything else. Even if it meant throwing away months or years of effort, that's discipline, having the courage to pivot or stop until you nail it.
So let's try and pull these threads together. We've talked about the relentless drive for simplicity,
Ultimate sophistication.
starting always with the user experience, not the tech.
Working backwards from there.
Having the vision to create things people don't know they need yet. Seeing the future.
Right, not just following the market.
The necessity of integrating hardware and software for seamlessness.
Controlling the whole stack.
And then that intense discipline. Saying no to maintain focus and iterating relentlessly, even starting over until it's perfect.
Exactly. And the key takeaway, I think, is that these aren't just rules for making computers or phones.
No, it feels much broader.
It's really a mindset, a framework for creating anything exceptional. A product, sure, but also a service, a process, maybe even just developing an idea fully.
It's about how you approach excellence itself.
Yeah, it challenges you to think differently, simplify like crazy, and just focus with incredible determination.
So thinking about these principles, simplicity, user focus, true innovation, integration, discipline, it makes you look around differently. What existing product, or maybe even just a common task or process you deal with, what do you think is just begging for a truly insanely great redesign, applying these ideas?
That's a good question to ponder.
Something you use every day that could be radically simpler, more intuitive, or reimagined completely to solve a problem you didn't even realize was a problem.
It makes you see the potential for improvement everywhere.
Definitely. We hope you'll consider these principles, maybe apply them, or just notice them more in the world around you, not just in tech, but in your own work, your own observations. How could this thinking lead to something exceptional in your world?
Something to think about.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.